I'm 35, and nothing is technically wrong with my life. That's the problem. I have a job. I pay rent. I wake up to an alarm, answer messages, scroll past other people's milestones, and tell myself I'll figure things out later. From the outside, my life looks stable enough. From the inside, it feels oddly hollow, not painful, not dramatic, just quiet in a way that makes you uneasy. Some nights, after the noise of the day fades, a thought shows up without asking permission. It doesn't shout. It doesn't panic me. It just sits there. If I stopped trying, would anything actually change? I don't mean in a tragic sense. I mean in the ordinary one. Would anyone's routine shift? Would my absence create a gap? Or would everything keep moving at the same speed? Barely noticing? I hate that I think this way. I know I'm supposed to be grateful. I know people have it worse. But gratitude doesn't cancel the feeling. It just makes me feel guilty for having it. That question followed me one afternoon when I drove to see my grandfather. He's 88, lives alone in a small house that smells faintly of old books and coffee. I didn't go there to talk. I didn't have a speech prepared. I just needed to be somewhere that didn't expect me to be anything. At 35, everyone tells you to think big, to aim higher, to chase meaning. I was starting to wonder what happens if you do all that and still feel like none of it matters. My grandfather has never looked like someone people go to for answers. He doesn't give advice unless you corner him. And even then, it's rarely what you're hoping for. He's the kind of man who fixes a loose door hinge without mentioning it, who waters plants even when it's about to rain, who sits in the same chair every evening as if that alone keeps the world in place. At 88, his life is small by most modern standards. No awards, no legacy anyone will write about. The house he lives in hasn't been updated in years. The television is older than most of my coworkers. His phone can make calls and nothing else. Yet, nothing about him feels unfinished. When I was younger, I assumed that was just because he was old. That time had sanded down his worries. Now, standing in his kitchen as an adult, I'm not so sure. He doesn't move like someone waiting for something better to start. He moves like someone who has already arrived, even if there's nowhere special to be. We don't talk much when I visit. He doesn't ask about my career, my plans, or whether I figured my life out yet. He asks if I've eaten. He asks if I'm tired. He listens more than he fills the space. That silence used to make me uncomfortable. I used to think he was withholding something, some hidden wisdom he'd reveal when the moment was right. Lately, I've started to realize he isn't holding back at all. He just doesn't believe everything needs to be explained. I sat at the kitchen table while he made coffee, watching him move through the same motions he's repeated for years. There was nothing impressive about it, nothing symbolic. And yet, something about the simplicity of it made my own life feel louder than it needed to be. At 35, I was always bracing for the next step, the next decision, the next version of myself I was supposed to become. My grandfather seemed content standing exactly where he was. We didn't sit down to have a serious conversation. There was no moment where I cleared my throat and announced that I needed guidance. We were just there, him rinsing a mug in the sink, me leaning against the counter, watching the afternoon light stretch across the floor like it had nowhere better to be. I don't remember deciding to speak. The words slipped out the way they do when you're tired of carrying them. I feel stuck, I said. He didn't turn around. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I added, I do what I'm supposed to do. I show up, but it feels like none of it adds up to anything. The water kept running. He dried the mug carefully, set it upside down, then reached for another. For a second, I wondered if he hadn't heard me, or if he decided not to. Then I said the part I'd been avoiding. I feel like I don't matter. That made him pause, just for a beat, not long enough to be dramatic, but long enough for me to notice. He shut off the tap and stood there, hands resting on the edge of the sink, as if he were considering something fragile. I waited for the kind of response people give when they want to fix you. A reassurance, a reminder of my potential, a speech about patience and time. Instead, he asked, "Did you sleep last night?" The question caught me off guard. "Not really," I said. He nodded like that explained something. He poured coffee into 2 cups and slid one across the table toward me. "Drink," he said. That was it. No comfort, no solution, just coffee. I felt a flicker of irritation. I'd finally said something honest, and it felt like he'd sidestepped it completely. I wrapped my hands around the mug, feeling the warmth seep into my palms, unsure whether to push further or let it drop. Before I could decide, he spoke again. "Who did you see today?" he asked. I opened my mouth to answer, then stopped. I ran through my day in my head. Co-workers, strangers, screens. "No one," I said finally. "Not really." He took a sip of his coffee and nodded once, like he'd been expecting that answer all along. I thought that would be the moment he explained himself. I waited for him to connect the dots, to tell me why my answer mattered, to turn my frustration into something useful. Instead, he leaned back in his chair and stared out the window, watching a bird hop along the fence like it had nowhere urgent to be. For a while, neither of us spoke. The silence stretched long enough for me to feel foolish for expecting anything more. I told myself this was why people didn't go to him for advice. He wasn't interested in solving problems. He didn't even seem interested in naming them. Just as I was about to change the subject, he said, "I used to work with a man who never talked much." I looked up. "He wasn't important," my grandfather continued. "Didn't run anything. Didn't lead meetings. He showed up early and left when the work was done." He paused, as if checking whether I was still listening. When he retired, they gave him a handshake and a sheet cake. That was it. I waited for the moral. It didn't arrive. Years later, he went on, I ran into someone who worked under him. He said that man was the reason he stayed. Said he'd planned to quit his first week. But someone noticed him, explained things without making him feel stupid. My grandfather shrugged. "That man never knew," he said. "Probably went home thinking it was just another day." He looked at me then, really looked, his expression unreadable. "You think matching is loud," he said. "It usually isn't." The words landed heavier than I expected. I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell him that the world didn't work that way anymore. That small things got swallowed up. That if you didn't stand out, you disappeared. But I didn't say any of that, because some part of me knew he wasn't talking about the world. He was talking about me. He didn't stop there. After a moment, he stood up and walked to the living room, motioning for me to follow. The room looked exactly the way it always had. Same couch, same bookshelf, same framed photos that no one ever dusted, but no one ever moved either. He pointed to one of them, a black and white picture of a group of men standing outside a factory. None of them were posed. None of them were smiling for camera. "That's Joe," he said, tapping the glass. "Third from the left." I squinted. Joe looked like everyone else. Same clothes, same tired posture. Nothing about him stood out. He used to bring extra sandwiches, my grandfather said. Didn't tell anyone, just left them in the break room fridge. "For who?" I asked. "For whoever needed them," he replied. People didn't talk about that sort of thing back then. He lowered his hand and sat back down. After Joe died, his wife told me people kept showing up at the house. Men I'd never met. Some drove hours. All they said was, "He helped me when I needed it." That was it. I felt something tighten in my chest. My grandfather wasn't telling heroic stories. No dramatic turning points. No speeches that changed the course of history. Just small, almost forgettable details. Then he told me about a woman who lived across the street. When he was younger, she used to sit on her porch every evening and wave at kids walking home from school. That was all. No conversations. No advice. One of those kids came back years later, he said. Said those waves were the only time anyone acknowledged him growing up. My grandfather shook his head slightly, like he still didn't understand it. "She thought she was just being polite," he said. "She never knew." That was the part that stuck. They never knew. All this time, I'd been measuring my life by outcomes I could see. Promotions, achievements, proof. My grandfather was talking about something else entirely. Effects that didn't show up right away, if they showed up at all. "You don't get receipts for this kind of thing," he said quietly, as if reading my thoughts. I sat there, replaying moments from my own life. Times I brushed off because they felt too small to count. Times someone had crossed my path and shifted something in me without realizing it. And for the first time, I wondered how many times I might have done the same for someone else, and walked away thinking the day was meaningless. On the drive home, I kept hearing his words in my head. You don't get receipts for this kind of thing. I realized how much effort I'd been putting into proving my life had value. I wanted evidence, metrics, something I could point to and say, see, this matters. Without that, everything felt flimsy, temporary, easy to dismiss. But the moments that had shaped me most didn't come with proof. I thought about a teacher who once noticed I was falling behind and stayed after class to help me catch up. I don't remember what subject it was. I remember the way he'd make me feel slow. I doubt he ever thought about that afternoon again. I thought about a friend who invited me out on a night when I was planning to stay home and sink further into my own head. We didn't talk about anything important. We just laughed. I slept better that night than I had in weeks. Those moments never showed up on a resume. They didn't change my status. They didn't move my life forward in any visible way. But they kept me from slipping backward. That's when it hit me. I wasn't actually afraid that my life didn't matter. I was afraid that if it mattered, I would never know, that I'd miss it, that I'd reach the end and realize I'd been looking the wrong direction the entire time. My grandfather wasn't asking me to aim lower. He was asking me to aim closer, not at the world, at the people right in front of me. When I thought about my days through that lens, they looked different, less empty, less useless, still ordinary, but not pointless. I'd been chasing a feeling of significance that only shows up after the fact. He was living in something quieter, something that didn't wait for recognition to exist. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel the urge to fix my life all at once. I just felt the urge to pay attention. I didn't make any big changes after that. There was no moment where I quit my job, reinvented myself, or suddenly figured out what I was meant to do. Life kept moving at the same pace. My alarm still went off too early. My commute still felt longer than it should. Most days still looked exactly like the ones before. But something in the background shifted. I started noticing how rarely people feel truly acknowledged, how easy it is to pass through an entire day without anyone really seeing you. I noticed it in myself too, how often I felt invisible, even in rooms full of people. So I tried something simple. I slowed down when I talked to people. I asked questions and waited for the answers instead of filling the silence. I stopped treating conversations like transactions I needed to get through and started treating them like places I could stand for a moment. It wasn't dramatic. No one thanked me for it. Most of the time, nothing obvious happened at all. But occasionally, someone would relax. Their shoulders would drop. Their voice would change just slightly, like they'd been carrying something heavy and finally set it down. I started realizing how many times I'd rushed past moments like that before, convinced they didn't count because they didn't lead anywhere. My grandfather's voice would drift back into my head when that happened. Who would notice if he didn't show up? The question didn't feel threatening anymore. It felt grounding. I still don't know what my life is supposed to look like. I still compare myself to people who seem further ahead. I still wonder if I'm falling behind some invisible schedule. But I don't end my days feeling like nothing happened. Something always does. I went back to see my grandfather a few weeks later. He was sitting on the porch, hands folded in his lap, watching the street like he was keeping it company. I sat down next to him. We didn't talk right away. With him, silence never felt like something to escape. After a while, I stood up to leave. He looked at me and said, "You came back." It wasn't praise. It wasn't encouragement. Just a statement of fact. But it landed heavier than anything else he could have said. On the drive home, I thought about how often I measure my life by what was missing. The clarity I didn't have. The certainty I hadn't reached. The version of myself I hadn't become yet. I treated those absences like proof that I was doing something wrong. Now I see them differently. Maybe meaning isn't something you uncover in one decisive moment. Maybe it's something that forms quietly, through repetition, through presence, through choosing to stay when leaving would be easier. I still don't know where my life is going. That question hasn't disappeared, but it doesn't scare me the way it used to. When I ask myself if I matter now, I don't look for a grand answer. I look for smaller signs. The people who notice when I'm there. The moments that would be different if I weren't. My grandfather never told me how to live. He never gave me a formula or a plan. He just showed me, without realizing it, that a life doesn't have to be impressive to be solid. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's more than enough.